do startups train? And if they do, at what stage do they train? What is the stage at which startups come to you for training interventions?
It's definitely, when you're really early stage, there is just no scope for it. But once a startup, I think a crucial sort of inflection point is once you start to kind of feel like you have product market fit of some kind, and you have a steady stream of clients, you're able to invoice, and you're starting to see growth, on the horizon, and you're at that cusp where you either you're talking to investors, or some investors have already shown some interest in you. That is when some of these things become more relevant. And based on the kind of work you do, a team size of between 20 to 30, you don't need more than that really in a training company, unless you're geographically really distributed.
And you don't need 20 people also. You can be a 5 crore firm with about 5 to 7 people. Right? And if you have a good amount of content development services, training alone will not get you that 5 CR.
Yeah.
You'll have to develop content. You'll need to productize it. There are those efforts. And if you have a team of 5 to 7 dedicated people, you can do a 5 CR.
You visualize the person standing in front of the mountain, and the voice, in his head, or a voice, tells him that you're not here to conquer the mountain. You're here to fall in love with the joy of climbing.
Awesome.
So if you come with that spirit, I think you'll enjoy the ride.
Wow. Welcome to the Immersive Edge podcast powered by mix3d. This is where the who's who of learning and development and corporate training come to share their experiences. If you're from the buyer's side or the seller's side, does not matter. We might actually have something for everyone. Our guest today is a senior learning and development professional with 2 decades of experience in senior leadership positions at First Ring, Transworks, Minax and Concentrix. In 2018, he decided to move to the supply side with his maiden venture Somagya. He is one of those who gave us a very balanced view of both the buyer and seller side of the training industry. In conversation with Vinayak Jakati. Vinayak Jakati, pleasure having you on the Immersive Edge podcast.
Absolutely. Pleasure is mine too.
Vinayak, how did you become Batman?
How did I become?
I remember meeting you at, I think then you were in Transworks.
Yeah.
And our first meeting was, you looked, I think you'd come out of a meeting with your boss, and you were possibly, I think that conversation didn't go well. And I'm standing there, her vendor, and you come up, you say, you had one ability to suddenly switch off, switch on. You're in that mode, okay, now I've given you time, now let's speak. And I knew that I should not be pitching anything to you on that day. But then 5 minutes later, I was,
You couldn't resist.
I couldn't resist. I pitched the program, and then I think you were the 4th buyer for Wisdom Tools, the then company that I was promoting. And I thought you were a little skeptical about buying simulation programs then, but then the feedback of it later on kind of changed your mind. Yeah, that was the first few interactions that I had with you, and we kept in touch. Thank you so much for accepting my invite to come to the podcast. I wanted to quickly get you up to speed about the kind of viewers we attract, right? Largely people from the learning fraternity, either from the buyer side, corporate L&D vice presidents, or from the supplier side, training trainers and training companies. And we also have a good set of audience who are looking forward to joining the industry. So most of my questions will be to kind of educate them about our industry and what they can look forward to, right? So that's our audience. So I might get very provocative, I'll kind of push you with some probably controversial questions. I'll push my luck. And I know you can handle it.
Sure. Yes, that I'm used to with Jay, of course. So, yeah.
So, Vinayak, a mechanical engineer who decided when you started saying, I don't want to do anything mechanical. I want to be in the creative space. That's how you started off your journey in the learning business, right?
Yeah.
But you were always in the buyer side.
Yes.
Good portion of your career, you were in the buyer side. You're one of those very few guests that we've had who's seen both sides.
We've seen both sides, yeah.
You've been a buyer, now you're in the supply side. We'll get into the, the buyer. That's how I knew you. How did you start? Or where did you start after you finished college? I think you were the millennial kid, right?
2000, yeah, was when I finished college. I was, when I got out, it was, IT was just kind of starting to, I don't think anybody really imagined what it would be back then.
Correct.
But something in me told me that I knew I wanted to move towards something creative. So the more, I did quite well in my engineering, actually academically, but then somehow, I knew my heart wasn't in it. So one thing led to another, and I found myself in ITPL in an interview, the call center, and in a few months I was there. 2001 started.
Yeah, and ITPL was a big thing back then.
Was the thing. I mean, back then it was just that was the district to be in, right?
Absolutely.
The place to really work in.
And you could see it from miles away.
From miles, yes.
Yeah.
And
that
the
was
beautiful
the
lawn outside, and now it's changed, of course. So started there, and within a few months of joining, I was pulled out into coaching, to work with new employees and help them come up to speed and stuff like that. And I really liked that. I kind of took a liking to it. And a few months from there, I got into training, and it's just kind of carried on from there, And over the last, from there for about a good 16, 17, about 18, 19 years, I think, I made the most of, this beautiful momentum that we had in India of, all IT business, ITES business really growing, and right place, right time. And, if you really enjoyed what you did, it was a great time to really build a career and get yourself to some place. And I think I was very fortunate to have worked with some wonderful people through that phase who saw some potential in me, and they kept throwing bigger challenges at me, different domains, different types of organizations, different geographies, got into global roles. And through it all, just one thing that just kept, getting stronger and stronger was the immersion in this space of learning and organization development.
Right.
And that's just, kind of continued. After a point, I got to a place where I was at a crossroads where I had to choose continuing in a larger leadership position in a much larger company, or really taking the road less traveled, so to speak, and get back to doing what I really loved, which is connecting with people, building content, building programs, building experiences.
Brilliant.
And that's how Samagna started.
Lovely. We'll keep at the buyer side. What kind of budgets? I mean, early 2000s to 2019. 2019 is when you started off, right? Did the learning budgets also kind of increase and become bigger and bigger? How was it like? What are the kind of budgets that you were actually handling? And
I think when I initially started, like proper L&D work in 2005, I think, there was no budget, so to speak.
Okay.
There was I mean, you didn't have a separate budget of your own. You just, whatever the business had, they kind of just took some cookies out on the side and said, here you can have some, and that's how it used to be.
Right.
So, and back then you didn't have so much of, at least the organizations I worked in, there wasn't a predetermined learning strategy which was linked to an organizational strategy and then you brought it all together and things like that. But it was more around where were the challenges and did those challenges have some kind of a capability angle to it? And within that, then, was there a behavioral leadership dimension to it or whatever technical functional side to it? What is the best, most efficient way to meet that challenge? And then you invested into it and then did your best with it. That was pretty much the model. So over the years, that started to change, of course, as the industry grew and the challenges of frontline management. A lot of us were really young people who were thrown into leadership positions quite early in our lives.
True. Yeah.
And many of us were not fully prepared for it.
Yeah.
So the need for really bringing people up to speed to A, just perform on the job, and then B, identifying people who have talent, who are going to really be the stars for you in the future. How do you really invest in their capability? So all those questions started becoming front and center as the industry matured.
Right.
Then we started seeing budgets and things like that come in. Like really in the post-2010 decade is when all of that, at least I started to see some of that later on.
Yeah, I could, I kind of agree with you. Until 2010, ops kind of decided what the
Pretty
budget
much
was.
Yeah.
And yeah, true. Now it's, I think, a lot more clear. There are budgets, there are allocations, and I think the vice president of L&D today gets good amount of, time in the leadership to promote, what he wants to do, what is the learning culture of the organization. Those are just lip service for a long time.
Yeah.
That has kind of changed.
Yeah. And now, of course, in the last 5 years, the other interesting dynamic that's coming up is how this whole learning question is being met in the startup world. And so their response is, again, different from established large corporations and how they approach it, right? With a lot more structure and a lot more rigor there, while here it's a lot more focused on where are we right now as an organization, what is it that we most need, who needs it, and how do we best kind of deliver to that requirement. So again, it's interesting being in the midst of both of those kind of two extremes. Yeah.
You work with startups, correct? So I want to ask you this question about, do startups train? And if they do, at what stage do they train? Because initially when they're setting things up and so on, I mean, everybody is doing everything.
Everything, all the time.
Right? Do you get involved after, let's say, some funding has happened, there are investors on board and the company kind of realizes that they can't continue with, everybody gunslinging won't happen. What is the stage at which startups come to you for training interventions?
It's definitely, when you're really early stage, there is just no scope for it.
Right.
Because pretty much you're in a survival mode and removing yourself from the thick and from the kitchen to think about anything else is, unfathomable. It's just not practical. And many people at the time, they're pretty much bootstrapped. Some are working even without a pay. So where would they really have the fancy of engaging a vendor and paying them a fat invoice, right? Doesn't work. Right. But once a startup, I think a crucial sort of inflection point is once you start to kind of feel like you have product market fit of some kind, and you have a steady stream of clients, you're able to invoice and you're starting to see growth, on the horizon, and you're at that cusp where, you're talking to investors, or some investors have already shown some interest in you. That is when some of these things become more relevant. And some of the early investments really are when that first handshake happens with, let's say, a seed investor or early stage investing. We see there's a lot of value in startups engaging at that stage, where we bring together the founders and some of the key people in the organization, along with people from the investing side, really come together to first envision, why have we really come together? What is the kind of organization we want to build in the time frame that we're going to engage together? And towards that, what kind of leadership is going to be expected of both of us? What roles do we play in this? What are the hard questions we need to learn to negotiate and confront whenever they will inevitably come up?
Right.
And how do we navigate those circumstances? So that becomes like a big exercise. And, in the instances where we've done that, it's worked out really well, because it takes out a lot of the anxiety on both sides about what to expect from the other side. Let the guard down, people take their masks off, speak candidly to each other. And the relationships they build in those early stages have a huge impact on the kind of equation that they share as the company goes through twists and turns and unexpected things that are bound to happen in a startup.
Right.
So through that, the partnership really matures, and whatever you want on both sides, if you're an investor, whatever exit you're looking for, or from the startup, how do you realize the value of this investment? It's a great handshake that goes on to a relationship. That's the early. Right?
Okay.
And then from there on, as it goes a little further, now we have clients, who've, let's say, crossed the 3, 4, 5 year mark of being in existence. They know their market. They have they're reasonably profitable. And now they're starting to, confront the culture question. We are going beyond one location. We might be going global, whatever. What kind of culture do we really now want to build in the organization? Because we're now starting to attract talent from different organizations. Do we hire only from startups? Do we also hire from large companies? So all these are common questions. And with that comes the conundrum of, when all these great minds really come together, will we actually have a highly functional leadership team, or will we have a set of dysfunctional superstars who can't work together? So that's some of the work we're doing now with some companies, where we are helping them really build that culture, where they not just see it as something that they put on the wall, but something a new employee experiences day in and day out. A senior person who comes in, how do they really experience the company? How do they have their voice heard? So that's the second sort of wave. And the third stage is when it really goes into capability development to a degree. Like the company that I was in before this, we were working in the oil and gas space, and we had a good bunch of tech folks, and we were considering moving to a new technology, and we wanted to then invest in just pure tech skills for people. So then you had a very clear reason for why you wanted that investment and for whom. So then it goes beyond the leadership into the employees who are making the growth happen. So I guess it's the seasons of that as the startup really grows. But very early stage,
no chance.
Nothing. Yeah. At least that's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I kind of resonate with you there. I mean, with the kind of work that you do, what portion of your revenue would come from startups?
Say about 30% now.
Okay, 30. And the large traditional companies are the rest. I'm certain that you enjoy the 30% more. There's a lot more things to do. Impact is higher.
Yeah, it is. I can't say more, but they're very different experiences for sure.
Things you know that the value that they derive out of it when the product or when your services kind of hit home, the value is like exponential.
And it's also a very humbling experience on this side because we also get to work with a much younger demographic. And quite often, things that you've done for 15, 20 years, you're finding yourself in a place where maybe it won't work as well as you thought it did, and you have to improvise. At the same time, you're also surprised by how far and how deep sometimes some work can go, because people are also willing to go in that direction. So there's a lot more, I would say. There's comfort on this side because I've been a buyer there. I get that world quite well. On this side, it really challenges us to bring our best to every relationship every time.
I mean, you also being a startup founder, you kind of resonate with those that you're helping as well. So I'd like to actually know more about the company that you started, the first firm that you started, correct? Give me the origin story of the naming of your company. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, Somagna, that's our company. And the name of the company really comes from sort of this dilemma I nursed through all my learning and OD days of laboring through the process of finding out really what is the pressing need that, must be addressed from a business perspective, from a people perspective, finding the best sort of solutions or interventions to address those, doing it with a lot of care and love, then people having a great experience and all of that. And then 2-3 weeks after that, you connect with the same people. It's like, water off a duck's back. You don't know where it went with a lot of them. So it always made me wonder that what is it about within that set, 15-20% of people who really take that experience and integrate it with their way of being and take it to a whole different place, particularly leadership, behavioral investments, not so much the technical,
Right.
Where there's a more obvious need and
It's quantifiable.
yeah, and there is something real you lose if you don't pick up a technology, for example.
Correct.
Which is not quite the same with this world. So as I got more into it, it really came down to one word, which is your environment. One is the obvious one is the external environment and what that environment is asking of you, which is your immediate team, the stakeholders you work with, your manager. How supportive is that environment of a change that you're trying to make? How much of a real need is there in that environment for you to make that change? And the second one is the internal environment, which is the collective, stories and everything that people have about who they are and how they think they need to be. And as a result of that, what they consider as being essential to really act upon, if it's like a behavior change, for example. So that got me more curious about, beyond the brain, what is it that as human beings, what is it that the workings of our inside that underpins any kind of behavior change, right? So that's what got me more interested into studying more in that space around how the body works, how beyond the brain, our whole nervous system plays a role in our behavior, the neurobiology of it. There's amazing research in the last 5-10 years that's coming up in that space. So, and also alongside, I've always had a long relationship of doing some kind of body work with myself, either sport or yoga has been the longest kind of companion. So, intrinsically, I know what that does, in my own experience. So that was the first part of it. So soma is the Greek word for the body.
Okay.
It's also the Sanskrit word for, soma as in the moon, and we know the effect that the moon has on us and stuff. So the first part is, soma, which is the body, and the second is ajna, which is the Sanskrit word, the sixth chakra of perception or wisdom.
Right.
So put together, you have the wisdom of the body, sumagnya.
Got it.
And so when we started the company, there's the three of us, partners that started the company. The vision really was that in any work that we do, whether it's workshops, coaching, anything at all that we do, that we always include the whole person and not just the brain. So anything that we do always has an element of how we bring the embodied story into the experience, how we embody the experience and then take it forward, so that anything that people go through doesn't just stay at the level of being a great idea, but it penetrates a little deeper and encourages them to take those next steps that they feel they need to and take it forward.
Interesting. So there's some good amount of outbound training as well to your solutions.
Yes, outbound, but with a little twist in the tail, if I can say. So we do outbound work. Like recently we worked with a client and we did an offsite for the leadership team. But all our outbound work at some point makes a U-turn and takes it right back inward. So there's three elements that we work with when we say body. There's the voice, which is the actual physical voice and how that comes out, right? I'm feeling now comfortable speaking with you. I'm sensitive a little about the temperature, and that has an effect on my voice. Otherwise, I'm quite relaxed, right? Beyond this, the voice is also the carrier of all the stories that we have about ourselves and the world and what it means to be effective in what we are doing. So the voice is all of that stuff, right? The things we carry in our head. Now, these stories then orient our attention in a certain angle towards certain things that we consider as important, things we consider as not being important, things we consider as being safe, things we consider as being dangerous. And based on where our attention goes, then our energy moves in that direction. So the third element is of movement, which is movement of thought, movement of emotion, behavior, action, all of that. So even in all our outbound programs, inevitably it comes back to these three dynamics of what is the voice in your head telling you? Where is your attention turning towards as a result of that? And what do you feel urged to now move towards?
Right.
Because of where your attention is going. So with every turn of this, you'll find that a new path is kind of opening up. And then teasing that path apart and open is then the next part of the story.
Interesting. You did this quick, the Somagya cards. Can we do this exercise for our viewers today?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? So because I like the idea of, the voice, the attention and the movement of energy to what you do. I thought the exercise that you took me through was a very powerful one. We must do this for the audience.
I think maybe for the benefit of the viewers, we could do that with just a quick background, right? I'd like you to think about an experience of being on an elephant, in an elephant ride. Have you?
Okay.
Yeah? What does it feel like being on an elephant ride?
I've been on one. It's actually very pricky. Elephant hair is...
Very thick skin, you feel the hair. Yes.
You feel the hair and it's very, very pricky unless you get used to it.
You're conscious all the time of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if it is, let's say, a big one, 30, 40-year-old, then he's got good...
Big tusker, yeah.
Big tusker only adds to the magic.
Yeah. So, and I'm assuming it was with a mahout who's also...
Yes, of course, yeah.
So when you're up there, what are your thoughts about the mahout and that? What are you hoping as you're getting up on the elephant?
Yeah, that's the difficult part. Once you kind of relax, then
you're okay.
Then you're okay. Yeah.
I mean, the metaphor, the elephant ride with the mahout, is really what we use to explain what a coaching or a transformation journey, can be about.
Okay.
It is literally like riding an elephant, with the equivalent of the rider, the elephant rider being the coach, and the passenger is the client who is going through the journey. the exciting thing about being on that is, of course, if you're doing a jungle safari, for instance, being on an elephant, there's nothing like it. You will experience the jungle in a way that you can never do in any other mode of transport that you can normally do, right? At the same time, like you said, it can be quite unsettling until you kind of find
Get your
feet.
balance.
and yeah. But the elephant, has a life of its own. So much like that, in our coaching conversations, the conversation, as the two people start interacting, it has a life of its own. It starts to take a life of its own because of there's the conscious stuff that we're talking about, and there's also a lot of undercurrents that are also playing in the conversation, which influences the elephant. And ultimately, it's the mahout's responsibility to make sure that the client has the experience that they signed up for, and that they get where they need to get to safely. Now, to do that, of course, the mahout needs to know the route and navigating all of that, and needs to connect with the client. But he or she also needs to really have a good understanding of the elephant and its tendencies. So the same voice, attention, and movement come in with the elephant as well. So really skilled mahout is able to pick up on some of these subtle things, like beyond the obvious trumpeting. Elephants also make a lot of these really guttural sounds that are suboral to the human ear, but you can pick them up as vibrations in your body. And when the mahout picks them up, he knows that, okay, there's something happening here at an emotional level for the elephant, right? With movement, again, with the tempo of the elephant's movement, the direction it's taking, sometimes little tension in its muscles, the mahout picks up all of that, right? And also attention. It sees a little bunch of bamboo trees there, and it's kind of attracted towards that. So he's got to make sure it doesn't get distracted. So unknown to the client, the mahout is actually doing a lot of little things to keep the elephant on course, make sure the elephant is calm, doesn't get too excited, and the client doesn't get jittery because of it, and manages the elephant. So that's what you're also doing as a coach. You're constantly working with the client with your own emotions, because when something's happening to the elephant, something's happening to you because you're in charge.
Of course.
So you're doing all of this dance. And every now and again, something happens where all your collective experience comes to a full stop.
Okay.
And nothing moves. The elephant just doesn't move anywhere, or it just gets distracted, and all your tricks are not working. Right? And that is when you've got to tap into another source which is not in the same field of activity and energy as you, the elephant, and the client, right? Something else that can kind of give you a bit of an opening of how to reconnect with the client or with the elephant in this moment, and then how do you find the way forward.
Right.
So that is where we have these cards. We call them the Sumagnya, or the wisdom cards.
Okay.
And what they are is they're a set of 64 cards that are there, which basically help you kind of get unstuck whenever you are feeling stuck, either in the midst of a conversation, or sometimes even like we use this in workshops. We use this as a great way to prepare. Something important is coming up. We pick a card, and kind of just see what that is doing. So like you found, what it does is immediately it kind of grounds all the voices that are going on in the head and brings it down to something very simple to say, this is the focus right now. This is what you need to focus on, and just kind of go with that, and then it moves forward, right?
Awesome.
So maybe we could give that a shot and see where this takes us. I know you picked a card earlier, but let's say if we were doing this virtually, right? I'll give you a demo of how I might do this virtually with a client, right? So now go ahead and pick a number between 1 and 64.
18.
18, okay. So 18 translates to 9, 1 plus 8. So I'm going to just now, with the shuffle that I've done, pick the 9th card on our deck. Let's see what it brings up. my God.
Right?
Okay. So the card that you've pulled up, why don't I?
Okay. Wow. Love. Devote yourself in service of someone or something. Right. Lunch is on me. Yeah.
So now this card, in the context of where we are in this conversation right now and where we were headed, this suddenly puts a new spin on where the conversation's going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where it's taking my attention to is some of the conversation we were having before this in the products you're building. And I could really see this, the sense of devotion that you and your team have really put in building what you have now. It's a labor of love, really. And this whole podcast and this whole investment that you're making is, that's what I see, right?
Yeah.
That's my connection with this word in this moment right now.
Right.
How does it, ring for you?
Yeah. Now that you've actually put me, the voice, the attention, and, the movement. Yeah, it kind of orients me right now to look at what I've built very differently. I started off as a training company owner, and I know all the problems that happen when you run a training business. So I knew that if I have to build something, build it for the community. Solve the problems for them. Naturally, all the problems you have will go away. Right? I always take inspiration from George Lucas. He's not done so many films that he could have. But whenever he worked, those are the age of miniatures when Star Wars was produced in the 70s. He figured out that they were making miniatures, took a lot of time to make those sets, shoot it. Miniature cameras needed to be made. CGI was not the in thing then. And if you see Lucasfilms and what they've done to CGI, George Lucas ensured that any director who came after him needs to only worry about the story and what they want to bring on screen. He spent his time solving the problem of a director. Allow him to think. Technology will make your dream come true. So whatever we see today is possibly because of all those people working together to make the life of a director better. Thereby, we are seeing stories like Avengers. You see CGI is truly doing the heavy lifting these days, right? Yeah, I always wanted to be the George Lucas of the training business. Forget the tech, I'll take care of it. You're good at what you do. Concentrate on that. There are elements of scalability and all of that technology provides you. You may or may not require it. But if you need it, here, we have a solution.
You have an answer for it, yeah.
You had a demo of the product. Where do you see Somagya using technology? Or do you see technology as a use case at all?
Yeah, it's, one of the places where today there is definitely scope for us to use technology is in mechanisms that we can build to create reinforcement systems for people, where you can give them self-paced, practice content, that is really thoughtfully designed, that is contextual, that is challenging, that is immersive, that people can really engage with a sense of purpose, and not because it's an academic thing to do or somebody's put that on their KRA or something, but people really take to it because it's fun. That engaging with this is actually a rewarding, entertaining experience. And I think often we, in the learning space especially, we underestimate how important it is for people to enjoy the experience.
Right.
Because that makes them really look forward to it. And from what I saw, The beauty of it is because, it is designed by people who have their roots in the learning space. You can see it's a technology solution that has its roots in instructional design. So the whole process of how you iteratively go through stages and build the product is very much like how you would build an in-person experience, for example. So in that sense, it renders itself very well to any type of content, even behavioral content. If it can be thoughtfully engineered, it can go into different kinds of simulation scenarios that you can use for either reinforcement, practice, assessment. Quite a lot of use cases, to be honest. And right now, I think, just speaking for Samagna, we are happy being, in this boutique space that we are in, where the core reason all of us left our jobs and we are doing what we are doing is because we just wanted to enjoy doing this experience, So as long as we are having this and it's paying our bills, we are happy, and we are not too troubled by questions of how big a company do we want to become. Yet, for clients who, let's say, want to take some of our work we do to a much larger audience, there could be some answers, in
technology,
the solution that you have of, how could we bring it to them? Yeah.
I caught this one piece that you said that, of course, I mean,
or, like, for example, cards. Right? One of the things we are considering is the cards are great as a physical, touch and feel. They have an energy to them. But this can also easily be a product, a technical solution. It could be an app. It could be anything. So there's definitely quite a few use cases in front of us. What stops us, I think, from going in that space is the level of immersion it requires if it has to be done by us on our own. And two, then, the investment, therefore, that it will also require. Having a platform like this, which is, really set up for the ecosystem, simplifies a lot of those complexities.
Yeah, true, absolutely. And, you have I'm just making a hypothesis here. You worked 19 years before you started, so I'm certain you were pretty comfortable and you can say things like, I'm here to do this, and money is eventuality, right? So that is true to you because you were the CEO of a company before you started off your own. How much money do you think a person requires before they can actually take the leap of faith that you did?
Oh, I don't think I could hazard answering that question, but and I think suffice to say, why don't I answer it actually with a story? I use this story quite a bit, and you do a lot of work in storytelling, and the engine is also built on storytelling, right?
Right.
So there was this guy, who living a fairly decent life, but then, he said, I need to go out and find my purpose. There's something unfulfilled, so I'm going to have to go out in the world and find out, right? So he begins his journey out from his village, and he says, well, as he gets out, he has to pass through a forest. So he just is carrying whatever little he's got with him and sets out in the forest. So somewhere through it, he meets fatefully these three robbers, notorious robbers who almost, nobody is spared. If you're passing through those forests, you have to encounter those three thieves. So he runs into them, and sure enough, they take everything that they have, he's got with him. And they just leave him with, one or two some old letters that he had or some stuff like that, just his memories. That's all that's left with him. And they go away, they blindfold him. They take him to a remote part of the forest and say, okay, we'll see you. And they're off. So eventually, he somehow manages to get off his blindfold and everything. And he's lost. He doesn't know where he is. So now he's at a choice point. He either continues this journey going forward. No path, there's no road, nothing. He's got to find his own way now. or he has to find his way back to his village, back to familiarity and comfort. So my question is to you, what do you think he did?
He went forward.
He went forward, right? And sure enough, he did. So we use that story as a metaphor for, when you're going forward with any purpose. The three thieves, of course, are, the three, metaphors for three obstacles that you're going to encounter. 3Ds, as we call them. The first is doubt. Doubt of, am I good enough to do this? Can I pull it off?
Right.
It's one thing being a VP in a company and you can be dissatisfied, but what you don't realize is the invisible security that an organization provides you. Not just in terms of salary, but just purely in terms of having an automatic sense of purpose, because an organization is a moving system.
Correct.
And whether you like it or not, you are constantly asked to bring your skills to the table, to bring your experience, get your team to do stuff. So you're creating value at all times. When you come out, you have to find that. You have to hunt, and to prove your worth first.
Correct.
So there's the doubt. There's the first, and it's always there. It never goes away. The second is distraction. As you start to go through this and, your savings, you're dipping into your savings and you start depleting them. And you're wondering, okay, now how do I do something that can get me some cash? How can I make a few invoices here or there? I can do this, I can do that, or maybe I'll sell t-shirts, or you'll get all kinds of ideas around just how to keep yourself afloat. So that's the second thing, which is distractions, right? There's innumerable distractions once you get out,
right,
to either just make money or things that will start looking lucrative to you because that's a great market or great idea, etc. Through it all, how do you stay focused on what is it that you're really about? Where can you add the most value? And how do you stay patient with that game? And the third is, if you kind of work with both of these two thieves, the third is disillusionment, which is, again, when you think you've kind of got it, and and then of course you meet a client who wants what you have, but is not even willing to pay you peanuts for it. So then the hard reality hits you of, oh my God, okay, this is where you are. Or you have a client who pays you what you want, but what you do kind of hits the fan. It doesn't work as well as you thought in your mind it might. So you have to face, there's nobody else holding it for you. You are front and center with those disappointments, those disillusionments. And eventually, the person making it forward, it comes down to, what did the three thieves leave with you once they were done with you? And what did you make of it from there on, right? So even now, those three are constantly, I'm aware of them all the time: doubt, distraction, and disillusionment. And that keeps you grounded at all times to not ever take it seriously. Again, like the elephant. No matter how seasoned you are as a mahout, you always know that the elephant is more powerful than you. You can never take it for granted for a single moment.
True.
So you always stay on top of your game.
Yeah. I would say, at least have 18 months of your burn rate before you get into the industry, because the learning industry kind of expects a lot of samples and pedigree before they kind of get you in.
Yeah.
Right? Especially in the space that you are in.
Yeah.
Which is the behavioral quotient, right? There, pedigree is very important. However, if you're in the technical training side, if you're good at the technology, then that's all that is required. And if you can actually hold the attention of your class, there's good amount of work that can come your way. But I think for you to actually see some profits in our industry, it's your third year.
Third year, absolutely, yeah.
The third year is when things are kind of, you have a few logos.
Correct.
And there is some amount of repeatability of businesses.
Yes, true.
Yeah, and you have a network that you're slowly building.
Yeah.
So if you have money for 3 years, I think you're good.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. Sorry, I didn't answer your question directly. I would say at least 2 years to keep you going family wise. What you can do, of course, is not fall into the trappings of wanting to build a company before you found out what it is that you can really do and do well.
Got it.
See, it's easy to go and I'll hire some employees or I'll set up an office, and those are things that you can very easily do at any point of time. But that's a classic distraction, because once you do that, that stuff starts to absorb so much of your attention and energy that it takes away from what this is really about, which is finding out who your customers are, what problems you can solve for them, and how you can solve them in a really differentiated way, right? Those are the questions that really need your attention. So if you can strip away all of the other stuff, stay lean, keep your expenses down to a minimum, prepared to sacrifice, then it's definitely possible. I mean, some people make it sound a lot scary than
it is not. Actually,
it's not. But you need to be willing to endure. Like you said, the first couple of years will be really hard. The thieves will be coming in shifts.
Oh yes, the doubt is it. Why
time.
Did I do this?
Always with you.
Did you go through that too?
All the time, yeah.
After being a CEO, a vice president, and all of that, and there is a check coming every month.
Yeah.
And now there is no check, and you're checking for the check.
Nothing. There's actually a grieving period you go through.
Yeah?
I did at least, of just like a moment of truth, for example, is when you file your IT returns.
Oh, yeah.
And when you see, right, so it looks like what I paid as taxes is now starting to look like my income.
Yeah, what you paid as taxes is your annual income now.
Yeah.
And you're getting refunds.
Yeah. Exactly. So those are the moments of truth that you've got to be willing to absorb. And then after that, there is a turnaround somewhere for sure. If you're stubborn enough, and if you're paying enough attention to what the market is telling you, what your clients are telling you, things will happen.
Yeah, and in the space that you are in, now let's say a 5-year, you're in that space now, right? How big can a company be in terms of people and in terms of revenue? All things going in your favor.
I'd say, if, again, success has many definitions, right? And for us, just a definition of success is, are we doing the work that we are really good at and that we really love most of the time and getting paid at the level that we feel that work is worthy of? And right now, I can say that's more than 95% of the time. That is the space that we are in. So, but again, if you have to look at conventional measures of success, if a company really finds an area that they're really good at and that they can do it in 5 years' time, if they stick to it, I think it won't be too much of an exaggeration to say, you can target something like 5 CR
easy,
in about 5 years
5 CR,
as annual revenue. And based on the kind of work you do, a team size of anywhere between 20 to 30, you don't need more than that really in a training company, unless you're geographically really distributed.
And you don't need 20 people also. You can be a 5 crore firm with about 5 to 7 people. Right. And if you have a good amount of content development services, training alone will not get you that 5 CR.
Yeah.
You'll have to develop content. You'll need to productize it. There are those efforts. And if you have a team of 5 to 7 dedicated people, you can do a 5 CR.
Yeah.
But interestingly, majority of the training firms that I meet, 5 CR is a kind of a glass ceiling.
Holy grail.
Holy grail, yeah. And there have been firms which have not crossed the 2 CR. Your first crore
Lifetime.
is lifetime. So 2 CR, they struggle. Right? Crossing the first CR is when you
That's the first big high, right?
that's the first big high.
Yeah.
And then around 1 CR, and if it's a small company, you'll get your income tax refund. But as you get closer to the 5 CR, there's no refunds. You have to pay that tax.
Yeah.
It's my belief that, at the end of the year, after filing, and you owe money to the government as income tax or corporate tax, you're truly growing. If you're getting refunds, somewhere I don't think your margins are good enough. There's something hitting you, and it's like I remember most of people, in England, once they cross the $100,000 a year, they don't have an incentive to stay back in Britain. Because all the benefits that you get are no longer there because you've crossed that one particular bracket. And people start evaluating and they start they want to go back to earning lesser. Why does that happen? Actually, that's the wrong way to look at it. You should be looking at, let's make more money. At 5 years, here again, I'm kind of generalizing, and you've seen money and you know that you're giving out invoices. There comes a point when a training firm or a training firm owner says, it's enough. I'm only going to serve so many people. Right? That is the beginning of the end, according to me. They'll be doing some great work, and it's a matter of something changing in the industry. They can be, and every 7 to 8 years you will see there is shifts. A churn, there are shifts.
Yeah.
There are shifts, and I think we are close to one. The pandemic kind of accelerated quite a lot of pushed technology into training. Now technology is taken for granted. It's an expectation. And when we said technology-based training, we didn't go too far. It is video-based training. It's run its course. What next? Right? And if we do not evolve, and I see that 5 CR, once you start see it dwindling, it's kind of a metric for you to say time to change.
And I feel it's, this is a creative profession, right? And a parallel I can draw for this is, like let's say if you're in a band, you're producing music. If you look at some of the really enduring names that are there over the years, who started in the 60s, 50s, 70s, and who are still playing, Rolling Stones, yeah. Now, what is, when you think of, in spite of their lifestyle and whatever else, what is the secret of their longevity and what keeps them still in the game? It is, and what separates them maybe from other groups which may have had bigger hits than them.
Yeah.
But they somehow could never continue on the back of those hits. It's because they've just continued creating. And that is, I feel, the key. You can't, have one hit program and kind of hope to keep running to the bank with that every time. Because what happens is, unbeknownst to you, you lose connection with that.
Yeah.
So today, in 2000, like last year, the Stones came out with Hackney Diamonds, their new album. But they're still playing Jumping Jack Flash. They're still playing Honky Tonk Woman. And it still sounds fresh because the performer in them is still alive. The creator in them is still alive. So every time they're even playing their old songs, it still has the same freshness. And I feel it's exactly the same for us in this area, that unless you're constantly creating, unless you're constantly seeking new things to learn yourself, whatever, you're going to get stale. So your great hit program won't work after a point because you're not working anymore,
Yeah. And also boredom.
Yourself, you lose connection with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen some amazing programs bite the dust.
Yeah.
Because they're not upgraded. And the things that worked with the millennials will not work with Gen Z.
No. Yeah.
Right? So that content has still remained the same. Yeah, I hear you there. I want to do, what are your 2 cents to people who want to join this industry now that you're 5 years into this and you've started off on your own? And if somebody wants to start off, what is the path that you would prescribe?
I'm assuming these are people who are people who would join from, let's say, being in an existing job, and then they, from the buyer side, they're coming into the supply side.
Right.
Right. I think to start with, first they need to have their reasons very clear of why they're joining. And I won't say that there is a particular reason which is right or wrong in that sense, but you need to be really honest about the reason. And even if the honest reason is, I just hate the job that I'm in right now and I want to do something else, but just being honest about it and not saying something that sounds glamorous or right to yourself, because that's the right thing to say. So get into it with being honest with yourself first, and then be prepared to face surprises. In your company, you are somebody. You come out there, nobody gives a... Yeah. So
The same conferences you attended,
Yes.
the same guys, once you move to the supply side, don't want to talk to you.
Don't want to talk to you, exactly, right? So you've got to be prepared to endure some of that. The most important thing is, if you're not comfortable selling, that's something you've got to learn. You've got to be able to do that. I see people in our industry, especially in this side where we are in, people can be a little uncomfortable in sounding salesy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is true, it's fair in its place. But if you do want to kind of hold your ground in this area, you've got to be willing to do that. And what I have found is you don't need to sell, really. What you need to focus on is in having quality conversations with people, understanding, listening to them, and then stuff will happen.
Yeah.
So you've got to be willing to be patient with it. You've got to nurture relations. I mean, you and I, over the years, we must have, there's less invoices we've exchanged than, conversations and having drinks together. And, and that's the kind of thing you've got to be willing to prepare. You should be prepared to do.
Yeah, this is definitely not an industry, Vinayak, I believe, where, like in tech, you can possibly become a billionaire in maybe 2-3 years.
No.
This is not going to make you the billions and all of that. It'll probably give you a very comfortable life, and the compounding effect of you being able to charge more with time will only happen if you put time into it. So there is not necessarily a formula that you can actually apply. If you're looking at building massive balances and all of that, I guess this is the industry in which it'll be. You will achieve it, but it'll take a little more time than you expected. That is probably something that I will have from my side for them to think about. And brilliant. It's actually been fantastic hosting you, Vinayak. Thank you so much for those stories.
Thank you.
I think that will be remembered.
I think the card you pulled up really sums it up. I mean, that's the card for anyone who's willing to join.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of, there was one day I was on a walk, just again, one of these times when, I'm not sure, the first thief is well and truly with me, doubt. And I kind of took the thief out for a walk, and then all of a sudden I got these 2 lines. I got the visual of a man standing in front of a mountain, and these 2 lines came to me, which then went on to become a poem. But I think those first 2 lines are apt. And that is, you visualize the person standing in front of the mountain, and the voice, in his head, or a voice, tells him that you're not here to conquer the mountain. You're here to fall in love with the joy of climbing.
Awesome.
So if you come with that spirit, I think you'll enjoy the ride.
Wow. Absolutely. The mountain's going to be there. Please enjoy the climb.
It's just a reason to climb. But yeah, you're here because you love climbing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. On that note, we look forward to hosting you again, maybe season 3.
Yes, inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah. Bye-bye.